Welcome back to This is Thailand. Now. If you've spent any time on this channel, you know the kind of stories we tell here. Men who came to Thailand chasing something, a fresh start, a warm body, a business opportunity, a version of themselves they liked better, and found out the hard way that Thailand has its own set of rules, and nobody hands you the rule book at the airport. Most of the time, those stories end badly. Man meets girl, man loses money, man flies home, humiliated. We've told that story a dozen ways because it happens a dozen ways, and every version has something in it worth hearing. But every so often we get a story that doesn't fit that shape quite so neatly. Not a disaster, not a triumph either. Something in between, which, if you think about it, is where most of real life actually lives. Today's story comes from Brendan Don. He's 59 years old. He's from Cork, in the south of Ireland. He spent 34 years as a bricklayer, sites across Ireland, a stint in London, the kind of working life that leaves marks on your hands and nowhere else you can see. He's not a flashy man. He didn't come to Thailand for the nightlife. He didn't arrive with a head full of stories about bar girls and go-go's. He came, if he's honest, because he didn't know what else to do with himself, and because somebody told him it was warm. What happened to Brendan in Chiang Mai is going to make some of you nod slowly. Some of you are going to want to argue with him. Some of you, I suspect, are going to recognize something in his story that you're not entirely comfortable recognizing. This one is going to sit with you for a while. Here's his story, in his own words. Right. So, I'll start by telling you what I am, which is a man who lays brick. Lay brick. 34 years of it. You start at the bottom, literally. You start at the foundation, and you work up, course by course. You bed the mortar, you set the unit, you check the level, you move on. There's a rhythm to it. Some lads find it boring. I never did. There's something satisfying about a thing that has to be done right or it doesn't work. A wall that's out of plumb, it'll tell you eventually. Buildings are honest that way. I grew up in Cork. North side. My father was on the sites, his father before him, so it wasn't exactly a surprising career choice. Left school at 16, started as a hod carrier, the lad who carries the brick and mortar up the ladder to the man doing the actual work, and worked my way up from there. Spent most of my 20s and 30s on sites around Cork and Limerick, did 3 years in London in my mid-30s, came home because London was London and home was home, and that was always going to be that. I was never what you'd call a social animal. I had my mates from the sites, we'd have a pint on a Friday. I was never the mates from the sites, we'd have a pint on a Friday. I was never the man who filled a room. Some people have that thing where they walk in and everything orients toward them. I'm not that. I'm the man in the corner who's been there an hour before you notice him. Fine by me, mostly. I nearly got married once. I should tell you about Cineed, because otherwise the rest of this doesn't make sense. I was 28. She was 26. We weren't going out, not formally. We'd grown up in the same parish, knew each other the way you know people you've been around your whole life, without ever quite seeing them, until one evening you do. She had dark hair, very dark. She laughed at my jokes, which not many people bothered with because my jokes aren't great, and she had this way of listening where you felt like what you were saying actually mattered. You know that feeling? When someone's actually listening, not just waiting for their turn to talk. I thought about asking her properly for, a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I kept meaning to sort myself out first, get the finances in order, find somewhere decent to live, be a version of myself I felt was worth offering to someone. Bricklayer logic, measure twice, cut once. Don't rush the course, or the whole wall goes crooked. She was married to a teacher from Tipperary before I'd finished measuring. I went to the wedding. That was a long day. And then I just got on with it. That's what you do. I told myself I was fine, and I worked, and the years went by, the way years do when you're working, and not paying attention to much else. 40s came. 50s. The lads from the sites got married, had kids, divorced sometimes, grandkids eventually. I was Uncle Brendan at every christening, the bachelor, Grand Crake, sound out, not a bother on him. And honestly, most of the time that was true. I wasn't unhappy. I just wasn't anything much after a while. I retired at 58. The knees had been complaining for a few years. The back joined in, and my foreman, who was 10 years younger than me, sat me down one afternoon and said, "Look, Brendan, the pension's there. The lads will look after you at the dinner." So I retired. Got a small trades pension, not a fortune, but I'd been paying in a long time. And I had a bit over 60,000 euro in the credit union that I'd accumulated over the years by not spending it on anything, because there wasn't much I'd wanted to spend it on. I went home to my flat, 1 bedroom, 3rd floor, good boiler, Cork city center, and I sat in it for approximately 4 days before I understood that I had absolutely no idea what to do with myself now. The sights had a rhythm. Same as laying brick. You get up at 6, you're on by half 7, there's the work, there's the tea breaks, there's the lads, there's the satisfaction of a thing that has to be done and you do it, and then that's gone. And the flat was quiet in a way I hadn't noticed it being before, because before I'd always been tired enough that the quiet was fine. Now the quiet was enormous. Room-filling. You'd turn on the radio and it helped, and then it didn't. There's a lad I'd worked with for years, Mossy. Moscow, really, Moscow O'Brien from Clonakilty, but everyone called, really, Moscow O'Brien from Clonakilty, but everyone called him Mossy. Mossy had been to Thailand twice in the last 3 years, and he would not shut up about it. Thailand this, Thailand that, the heat, the food, the people, the cost of living. Sure, you could live like a king over there, Brendan, on what you'd spend on a week in Lanzarote. I'd been listening to Mossy go on about Thailand for 3 years and filing it under things I'd never actually do. This was January. Cork in January is, well, if you've been there, you know. The sky goes a particular color, sort of gray-brown like wet concrete, and it stays that way from November to March, and after a while it becomes actually oppressive. I was sitting at my kitchen table one evening, the rain going sideways outside, the radio on, nobody expecting anything from me in particular, and I googled Chiang Mai, Thailand. I'm not sure why Chiang Mai specifically. Mossy had mentioned it, said it was quieter than Bangkok, less of the carry-on, more his sort of thing. The photos came up, temples and mountains in the background, and trees, and this golden light that looked almost physically warm, and I had my flights booked inside the hour, which is entirely unlike me. Entirely. I am not an impulsive man. I think about things. I make lists. But there it was. The confirmation email, 3 weeks in Chiang Mai, starting the 23rd of January. I sat back and looked at it for a long time. I told myself I wasn't looking for anything. I want to be clear about that, because it matters. I wasn't going over there to find a woman or start a new life, or any of that. I needed to be somewhere warm that wasn't here and somewhere different that wasn't Lanzarote again. That's all it was. That's what I told myself, anyway. And I mostly believed it. I was 58 years old, I had 60-odd thousand euros and a pension and nothing particularly wrong with me. I packed a bag, I'm not a heavy packer, never have been, and I got on a plane. The flight was 14 hours with a stop in Dubai. I slept a bit, watched half a film I can't remember the name of, ate whatever they put in front of me. Not a nervous flyer, never have been. Heights don't bother me. You spend enough years on scaffolding, you make your peace with being off the ground. I landed in Chiang Mai in the late afternoon. Coming out of the terminal, the heat hit me in that way it does when you've never experienced tropical heat before. Not like summer heat at home, not like Spain. It's a different thing entirely. Thicker, somehow. Like the air has weight. I stood there for a moment with my bag and just breathed it in, and I thought, right, fine, this is somewhere else entirely. I booked a guest house near Nimmin Road on the recommendation of a travel forum Mossy had pointed me at. Small place, clean, run by a family, about 800 baht a night, not even 25 euro. My own room, air conditioning, a little balcony. I'd been paying more than that for a car park space near my old site in Cork. The first few days I just walked. That's what I do in new places. I walk until I know where things are, same as I'd survey a new site before touching anything. Chiang Mai's old city is this square, ancient walls and a moat around the outside. And inside it you've got temples, and little restaurants, and guest houses, and motorbikes everywhere. Motorbikes absolutely everywhere, weaving through in streams like they know something cars don't. The sound of them never stopped, morning to night, along with construction somewhere always, and the birds, and occasionally from somewhere you couldn't quite locate, temple bells. I found a market near my guest house that opened at 6 in the morning, and I ate breakfast there every day. These little pork skewers, mu ping they're called, grilled over charcoal with sticky rice in a bag, cost me maybe 30 baht, less than €1. And they were just good. Simple and good. I ate them standing up every morning and watched the city move around me and felt, not happy exactly, but quieter than I'd been in a while. The good kind of quiet, not the court flat kind. I went to Wat Chetty Luang on my 3rd day. It's this enormous temple in the middle of the old city. The main Chetty is 500 years old or something like that, partly ruined by an earthquake centuries ago and just left as it is. I sat in the courtyard for a long time. I'm not a religious man, Catholic upbringing, which in Ireland means you spend your 20s recovering from it. But there was something about the scale of the thing, the age of it, that I found agreeable. A thing built to last. I understood that. 2 weeks went by like that. Quiet, ordinary, pleasant in a low-key way that suited me. I wasn't doing the temples and elephants tourist thing particularly. Mostly, I walked, ate, read in the evenings, slept well for the first time in months. The pension converted well. My small Irish trades pension, about €900 a month, goes a long way in Chiang Mai if you're not throwing it at bars. I wasn't throwing it at anything. The Sunday walking street runs along Walleye Road, south of the old city, all handicrafts and street food, and crowds moving slowly in both directions. I'd been once already that trip and found it a bit much, but I went again the second Sunday because I'd spotted a small restaurant on a lane just off the main drag that had plastic stools and a handwritten menu board and smelled extraordinary. Pad see ew. Wide rice noodles, egg, Chinese broccoli. This dark sweet soy sauce, served in a bowl big enough to embarrass you. I ordered one and sat down with it and got on with it. I was about halfway through when she sat down, not at another table. At mine. There were other seats, but she sat across from me, put her bag down on the stool beside her, and said, in careful English with a slight tilt to it, "Excuse me, are you lost?" I looked up. She was, well, 30s, I thought, maybe early 30s. Small, dark hair pulled back, wearing a plain blouse, not dressed up. She was looking at me with what I can only describe as genuine curiosity, the way you'd look at something unusual but not threatening, not performing anything, just looking. I said I wasn't lost, I was eating. She said most Farang who ate on that lane were looking for the walking street and had gone the wrong way. I said I'd gone looking for the smell. She considered this for a moment and said that was a better reason than most people had for being anywhere. And then she just stayed, not in a pushy way. She ordered her own food. We ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, and then we started talking the way you do when you're both eating and there's nobody else around. She asked where I was from. I said Ireland. She asked where I was from. I said Ireland. She said she'd never spoken to anyone from Ireland before. I said that was probably wise. She laughed. A real laugh, not a polite one. Her name was Nook, nickname. They all go by nicknames. You learn that fast. She worked at a small import company near Maya Mall, had done for 6 years. Lived with her younger sister maybe 20 minutes from where we were sitting. No bar work. She said this plainly and without particular emphasis. Just as a fact about herself the way you'd mention your job. She'd worked in hospitality for a year after university, she said, and hadn't liked it. That was all she said on the subject. She paid for her own food when the bill came. I offered. She declined, not with a big fuss, just a small shake of her head and her money already on the table. I noted this the way I'd note a measurement that came out right, not a big thing, just accurate. We exchanged line details before she left. She said she hoped I enjoyed the rest of Chiang Mai. I said I thought I probably would. And she was gone, weaving off through the lane on a small Honda with the easy confidence of someone who'd been riding motorbikes since before she could vote. I walked back to the guest house. The temple bells were going somewhere in the distance, and the air smelled of charcoal and frangipani and whatever they were frying on the corner stall. And I thought about nothing in particular, which was the most honest thought I'd had all week. I want to say something here, just for the sake of being straight with you. I wasn't naive about Thailand. I'd read enough online, listened to enough of Mossie's stories to know the broad shape of what could happen to a man over here if he wasn't paying attention. I knew about the bars and the bar girls and all of that. I wasn't unaware, curls, and all of that. The thing is, I thought that awareness was a kind of protection. I thought knowing the thing existed meant I'd see it coming. Nook didn't work in a bar. She had a job. She paid for her own coffee the next afternoon when we met at a little cafe on Niman Road, and she asked me questions about what Cork looked like and whether Irish pubs were actually like what she'd seen in films. And she listened to the answers properly, the way Cindy had used to. That same quality of attention. I thought I knew what to watch for. I was watching for the wrong thing entirely. The last week of that first trip was the best week I'd had in years. I'm aware of how that sounds. 58 years old, best week in years. One conversation with a woman over a bowl of noodles. But there it is. We met twice more before I flew home. Coffee, the afternoon after the restaurant, at a little place on Niman Road with ceiling fans and wooden chairs and iced coffee that came in a plastic bag on a rubber band, which I'd never encountered before and thought was brilliant. She asked me about Cork, what it looked like, whether it rained as much as people said, what Irish people ate. I told her about the English market and the Lee and the way the hills come down into the city on both sides, and she listened with that particular quality of attention she had, where you felt the questions were real questions, not conversation filler. The second time, the evening before my flight, we walked the path around the outside of the old city moat. It's maybe 5 kilometers, all the way around, and we did the whole thing slowly in the dark, the water to one side and the old wall on the other and the motorbikes going past every 30 seconds. We talked about, I don't remember exactly, work, Thai, families. Whether a person could be content living alone or whether they were just telling themselves they were. She said she thought some people were made for company and some weren't, and that it usually took most of a life to work out which you were. I said I might be getting there. She didn't try to hold my hand. Nothing like that. We said goodbye outside the guest house with a YA, the Thai greeting, palms together, and she said safe travels, and I said I'd be in touch, and I meant it. But I wasn't sure I believed myself. I flew home to Cork the next morning. I didn't tell myself anything in particular on the flight. I'm not someone who narrates his own life to himself. I just sat there and ate the food and watched the clouds below and thought about the moat walk and the iced coffee and the temple bells. And then I was back in Dublin and on a bus to Cork and home. And then the messages. It started gradually, which is how these things do. She sent me a photo of the Pad CU from the restaurant on Walleye Road a few days after I got back, with a message saying she hoped Ireland was not too cold. It was -2 in Cork. I sent her a photo of my kitchen window with condensation on it and wrote, "This is Ireland in February." She sent back a laughing face and something in Thai I had to Google Translate, which turned out to mean roughly, "I am sorry for your suffering." That made me laugh out loud in an empty flat. I can't tell you the last time that happened. We messaged most days after that. Nothing intense. This is what I want to make clear, because I know how it sounds. It wasn't declarations of love or any of that. It was more like correspondence, I suppose. She'd tell me something mundane about her day. I'd tell her something mundane about mine. She sent photos of food constantly, which I came to understand is just a Thai thing. That's how you communicate affection over there. You send pictures of what you're eating. I started doing it back. One evening I photographed my beans on toast and she sent 3 crying with laughter faces and said she'd pray for me. 4 months of this. And somewhere around month 3, I caught myself, at 7 in the evening on a Wednesday, looking forward to whatever she'd sent that day. And that embarrassed me slightly. 58 years old, looking forward to a photo of someone's dinner in Chiang Mai. But I was. Obviously I was. I booked the return trip without making a big song and dance of it, even to myself. 6 weeks this time. I told Mossy I was going back. He nodded like this was entirely sensible information. I didn't tell anyone else because there was nobody else to tell. The second visit was different from the first in a way that's hard to explain. There was continuity. There were things we'd already talked about, shared reference points, the moat walk and the Pad CU restaurant and the iced coffee in a bag. It didn't feel like starting again. It felt like arriving somewhere you'd been before. We fell into a shape pretty quickly. Evenings together most nights, usually eating somewhere. She knew every good cheap restaurant in a 2-kilometer radius of the old city, and I let her lead because she was always right. Lunch I'd do on my own, walk around, sit in a cafe with a book. She worked during the day, I had my own time, we'd meet in the evenings. It was, I don't know, it was a reasonable life. It felt like a reasonable life. She organized a day trip to Doi Inthanon, the national park up in the mountains, about an hour and a half from the city. We went on a Saturday in a Songthaeyu she'd arranged, one of those red pickup trucks with benches in the back. Up in the mountains, it was actually cool, genuinely cool, and we walked to the waterfalls and ate lunch at a little place near the temple at the summit, and I thought, this is a good day. Simple as that. This is a good day. I paid for things as we went, meals, the trip, entrance fees. And I want to be honest with you about this because it matters for what comes later. I wasn't keeping track. It didn't feel like keeping track of anything was appropriate. When you're going out with someone, you pay for things. That's normal. Maybe she paid for her own coffee that first time to establish something, I don't know. Maybe it was just what she did. Either way, by the second visit, I was paying, and it felt right, and it never occurred to me to question it. It was maybe €400 across those first few weeks if I added it all up, and I didn't add it up. It was around week 3 when she mentioned, not as a big thing, just in passing, that her father hadn't been well. A chest infection that had been going on too long, she said. He'd been seen at the local clinic, but they were thinking he might need to go somewhere better. She said it with that particular Thai quality of understatement, where the gravity of something is obvious precisely because they're being so careful not to impose it on you. I said I was sorry to hear that. She said it was fine, these things happened. And we talked about something else, but I thought about it that night. I thought about it quite a lot, actually. 3 weeks into that second visit, she asked if I'd like to meet her family. She didn't make a big production of it. We were eating at a little place she liked near the night bazaar, some kind of larb with pork and toasted rice and herbs I couldn't name. And she said her mother had been asking about her Farang friend, and would I like to come up to the village the following Saturday? Just if I wanted. No pressure. I said yes. Obviously I said yes. Obviously I said yes. It was about 2 hours north of Chiang Mai, up into the agricultural flatlands where the mountains flatten out and the fields go on and the road gets smaller the further you go. Nook drove. She borrowed a car from a colleague, and I watched the landscape change from city to suburb to farmland, the rice paddies green and flat under the sky, the occasional spirit house on a pole at the edge of a field, a few kilometers of nothing, and then a cluster of houses and a temple with a gold roof catching the light. Her parents' place was a modest compound, a main house, concrete block construction, a covered area outside with plastic furniture, a vegetable garden down one side, chickens somewhere out of sight, well kept. Everything in its place. I noticed that because I noticed things like that. Someone cared about this place. Her father was in a chair under the covered area when we arrived. He stood when he saw us, which cost him something. You could see it cost him, but he stood, and he held out his hand, and when I shook it, he looked me in the eye with an expression I can only describe as assessment. Not unfriendly. Just measuring. The way a foreman looks at a new man on site before he decides what he thinks of him. I respected it. Her mother was different, smaller, rounder, immediately in motion, bringing food, adjusting chairs, communicating entirely in Thai and facial expressions, refilling my plate before I'd finished what was on it. She fed me things I had no names for, and pointed at each dish and said something, and Nook translated, and I ate everything, and meant it when I said it was good because it was extraordinary. Some tam, which I'd had before but not like this. Sticky rice from a little woven basket, some kind of grilled fish with herbs. A soup that was spicy in a way that built slowly and then stayed with you. And I sat there on a plastic chair in a farmyard in northern Thailand, with chickens somewhere nearby, and the smell of wood smoke, and the sound of Nook and her mother talking in Thai, and her father nodding occasionally from across the table. And I felt, I want to say this carefully, because it's important, and I don't want to overstate it. I felt like I was somewhere, not visiting somewhere. Actually somewhere, in the way you are when a place has weight to it and you have a reason to be in it. I'm 58 years old, I've been in a lot of places. That feeling is rarer than people think. I think about that afternoon a lot now, not with bitterness, more with, I don't know. A kind of careful attention, the same way I'd look back at a wall that cracked and try to understand exactly where the problem started. The farmyard is where it started, not because anything dishonest happened there. I want to be clear about that. The father was genuinely ill. The mother was genuinely warm. The food was genuinely extraordinary. There was no performance happening that I could detect, and I'm not someone who misses performances. The clinic bill came up near the end of the afternoon. Nook mentioned it quietly, almost as an aside, translating something her mother said, 15,000, about €400, for the father's treatment at a better facility in the nearby town, where they'd confirmed it was a chest infection and prescribed antibiotics and monitoring. She wasn't asking. She was just telling me, the way you'd tell someone about a difficulty without wanting to burden them with it. €400. That's 2 weeks of pension for me. It's also, I later learned, close to 2 months' income for a rice farming family in rural northern Thailand. Those are two very different amounts of money wearing the same number. I said I'd like to help with that, if they'd let me. Nook translated. Her mother's face did something complicated, gratitude and dignity, and something that might have been relief, all at once. Her father looked out at the garden and said nothing. We didn't discuss it further. I sent the money the following week, after I got back to Chiang Mai. A bank transfer through Nook. I didn't ask for receipts or accounting. You don't ask someone for a receipt when their father is sick. That's not how it works. Not where I'm from, anyway. I went home after the 6 weeks, flew back to Cork, got the bus, made tea, sat in the flat. Mossy texted asking how it went. I said grand, which was true, as far as it went. And then, over the following 6 months, the transfers. I want to be honest with you about each one, because I think the honesty matters. There was one 8,000, about €200, for her younger sister's university registration fee. A deadline that had come up unexpectedly, Nook said apologetically. The way she always said things like this, as if she was imposing terribly and knew it. The sister was studying education, wanted to be a teacher, €200, grand. Then, €222,000, roughly €570, when Nook's motorbike was badly damaged in an accident. Not her fault, she said, another vehicle. The repair shop wanted the money up front. She had some of it. Not all of it. Not all of it. She asked if I could help with the gap. I could. I did. Then Persti 5,000, about €900, when her landlord raised the rent and her salary didn't stretch to cover the difference. This one she was most uncomfortable asking about. Took her a week of circling around it online before she said it plainly. I actually felt bad for her about the discomfort. I told her not to worry about it. I sent it. Total across those 6 months, approximately $1,700. The whole lot. I told nobody at home. I want to explain that because it might sound like I was hiding something. I want to explain that because it might sound like I was nobody to tell. I don't have a wife to consult or a family who'd ask questions. Mossy would have taken the mic and then been supportive, probably, but I didn't feel like having the conversation. It was my money, and I'd done what I thought was right with it. Same as I always had. None of it felt like a shakedown. I've thought about this a lot since. Every request had a shape to it, a specific problem, a specific amount, a specific reluctance on her part that felt real. It was like lending money to a decent neighbor who hates having to ask. Awkward for both sides. Obviously the right thing. You don't interrogate a decent neighbor. You help them and you move on. That's what I told myself. And I believed it, because it was mostly true. The mostly is what gets you. I did a spreadsheet. I'm a bit embarrassed about that, but I did one. Before the third trip, sat down one evening in Cork with a cup of tea and worked out what a permanent stay in Chiang Mai would actually cost me: rent, food, transport, medical insurance, visa fees, the lot. My pension converts to about 38,000 baht a month at current rates. A decent apartment near the old city goes for maybe 18 to 20,000 baht. Food, if you're eating sensibly and not throwing money at tourist restaurants, another 5 or 6,000. Transport, incidentals, the odd Chang beer in the evening. You could live comfortably on what I had coming in and barely touch the savings. I looked into the retirement visa as well. You need to be 50 or over, I qualified, and you either parked 800,000 baht, about 21,000 euro, in a Thai bank account, or you demonstrate income of 65,000 baht a month, which I didn't quite have. So the bank deposit route, that would mean moving a chunk of my savings into a Thai account and leaving it there, which I wasn't entirely comfortable with, but it was manageable, doable. I put all of this in the spreadsheet and looked at it for a long time and thought, well, it's possible. I booked 3 months. The apartment I rented was on a small soi off Nimon, second floor, decent-sized room, a little kitchen area, a balcony that looked out over a tangle of power lines, and a spirit house on a pole, and, beyond that, the mountains. It cost me 22,000 baht a month, about 570 euro. By Cork standards, this was almost defensive value. I paid 3 months up front, which the landlord was pleased about, and moved my things in, and Nook came over that first evening with a bag of Calpad and 2 cans of Leo, and we sat on the balcony and ate and watched the sun go down behind the mountains, and I thought, right. We'd settled into something by this point that I'd stopped calling anything in particular, because giving it a name felt like tempting fate. She cooked for me 2 or 3 evenings a week. Thai food she made looked effortless, ingredients from the market down the road. I learned to make coffee the way she liked it, very strong, very sweet, over ice. She'd fixed a loose tile in my bathroom without me asking. I'd sorted a dripping tap in her flat. We were comfortable together the way you can only be when you've moved past performing and into something more like just being in the same space. I valued that. I still do, actually, whatever else I say. Songkran arrived about 6 weeks into the trip. That's the Thai New Year, mid-April, which in practice means the entire country has a water fight for 3 days. It's something else, I'll say that. You cannot walk 10 meters in Chiang Mai during Songkran without getting absolutely soaked by a small child with a water pistol the size of a rifle. I found it tremendous. We went up to the village to be with her family for the main day. Her mother had made an enormous amount of food. There were cousins and neighbors appearing from everywhere. And when it was time, I gave her mother an envelope with 3,000 baht in it, about 80 euro, which I'd understood was the appropriate thing to do during family holidays. Nobody told me to. I'd read about it. It felt normal. It was normal. That's how it works there. And I'm not sure there's anything wrong with how it works there, if you understand what you're agreeing to. Her mother was warm as always. Her father was a bit stronger than the last time. The chest infection had cleared. The antibiotics had done what they were supposed to do. He found me a stool and sat beside me, and we communicated mostly through nods and the occasional piece of grilled pork pushed in my direction. I liked him. I liked the whole of them, honestly. It was about 2 weeks after Songkran when the conversation happened. We were at Nook's mother's house, just the 3 of us that day. The sister was at college, the father resting inside. Her mother said something at length in Thai. Nook listened, and then she was quiet for a moment, and then she started translating in a careful, stop-start way that told me she was choosing words. The family needed to understand what this was. The relationship. Whether it was serious. In Thai culture, and Nook said this gently, almost apologetically, a relationship that is serious has a shape to it that both families can see and respect. There is sinsad, a bride price. Not a purchase, she said quickly, not like that, but a gesture that says to the woman's family, I see your daughter's value, I'm not just passing through, the amount varies, it's not always enormous, but it exists. And there was the matter of her parents. They were getting older. Her father's health was uncertain. The house they lived in was fine but old, and on the family land there was room for a small structure, something modest, that would mean her parents didn't have to worry as they got older. Nook said she would never ask me for something like that. She said it wasn't fair to expect it. She said she was sorry her mother had raised it. Then she stopped talking and looked at the table. Her mother looked at me. Not with expectation exactly, more with the quiet patience of someone who has said what needed to be said and is now simply waiting to see what kind of man is sitting at her table. I want to tell you what went through my head in that moment, because I think it's important. I didn't think about money. I didn't think about property law, or whose name land can be in, or any of that, and I should have. I should absolutely have thought about those things, but I didn't. What I thought about was 30 years of measuring twice and never cutting. All the times I had the words and didn't say them. Sinead in her wedding dress marrying a man from Tipperary because I hadn't been ready when I needed to be. I said, look it, we'll sort it. Nook looked up. Her mother's expression shifted very slightly. Not triumphant, not relieved, exactly. Something quieter than either of those things. Over the following 2 months, I transferred €80,000 toward a house foundation on the family land. That's about €7,400. It went in 4 tranches, each one tied to a stage of construction. I asked for photos each time, which I thought was sensible, and I received them. Concrete being poured. Foundation walls going up. Rebar sticking out at the corners. Real work, real progress. The photos looked genuine to me, and I'm a man who has worked on construction sites his entire adult life. I know what a foundation looks like. Now, I should tell you something I learned only later, after I'd already sent most of it. As a foreigner, I cannot own land in Thailand. Cannot. Not in my name, not ever. Not without structures that are legally questionable at best. Whatever was being built on that family land was being built on land that would never be mine, could never be mine, in a country where my legal standing as property owner is essentially nothing. I didn't know that when I agreed. I hadn't asked anyone who would have told me. There was a lad named Willem, Dutch engineer, 8 years in Thailand. I'd met him at a coffee morning for expats near Maya Mall a few weeks earlier. Retired, pleasant, knew everyone who might have told me if I'd asked. But I hadn't asked yet. I wasn't naive. I know that's what everyone says, but I want to be precise about it. I wasn't naive. I was hopeful. Those are different things. Naive is when you don't know enough to see the risk. Hopeful is when you know there's a risk, and you decide the thing you're hoping for is worth it anyway. I've thought about which one I was. I still haven't entirely settled it. The first thing I noticed was the working hours. Not immediately. This was well into the 3rd trip, maybe 7 or 8 weeks in. We'd been together every day for the first 6 weeks, more or less, and then I became aware that she was sometimes just not available. A Tuesday evening, 7:30, I'd send a line message and the tick would go blue, meaning she'd read it but no reply for 2 hours. Then a reply that was warm and ordinary and explained nothing. A Thursday where she'd said she was working, but then mentioned something she'd seen at a market near Nimmin, which wasn't near her office and wasn't somewhere you'd pass on the way. I didn't say anything. I noted it. In 34 years on building sites, I learned to trust a certain kind of feeling. The one you get when something isn't quite right and you can't say exactly why yet. A wall that looks level but something in your eye tells you it's off by 2 or 3 millimeters. You don't know it from looking straight at it. You know it from a kind of peripheral wrongness. I had that feeling. I didn't know what to do with it. There was a Sunday morning coffee for expats that someone had organized through a Facebook group for foreigners living in Chiang Mai. I'd been once before, a few weeks earlier, and met a Dutch man named Willem, retired engineer, Eindhoven originally, 8 years in Thailand, knew everyone and everything, and had the particular unhurried quality of a man who'd seen enough to stop being surprised by things. Pleasant company. Not a bitter man, which I'd come to understand was rarer than you'd think among long-term expats. He was at the coffee again. We ended up at the same table outside a place on Nimmenhamen Road, with good espresso and a view of people going past on motorbikes. We talked about general things for a while, visa requirements, where to find a decent plumber, the road works on the ring road. And then, without any particular transition, he asked how well I actually knew Nook's life when I wasn't in it. Not accusatory, not edge to it. Just a question, the way an experienced site manager asks a question when he's already formed a view and wants to see if you formed the same one. I said I knew her well enough. He nodded. Changed the subject. We talked about something else entirely for another 20 minutes. And then I went home. That nod. I thought about it for days. There are nods that mean I agree, and nods that mean I accept what you've said, and nods that mean something else entirely. The nod you give when you've decided not to say the thing you know, out of respect for a person's right to find it out themselves. That was the third kind. I know that now. I knew it then too, if I'm honest with myself. So I started paying attention properly, not dramatically. No private detective, no going through her phone, nothing like that. No private detective, no going through her phone, nothing like that. I wouldn't have done that regardless. It's not in my nature. I examine things carefully and systematically, and I draw conclusions from what's there. That's all I did. I started cross-referencing small things. She'd mentioned a colleague at her company, a woman named Pim, twice in separate conversations, but in one conversation, Pim worked in accounts, and in another she was in logistics. When I mentioned Pim again, asking something innocent about her, Nook said the name like she had to retrieve it from somewhere, just half a beat too slow. I noted that. Her line status. I'm not someone who monitors other people's online activity. That's not who I am, but once I started noticing I couldn't stop. Active at 2 in the morning on a Wednesday. Active at 11 on a Saturday night when she'd told me she was tired and going to sleep early. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. People are awake at odd hours. That's not evidence of anything, but I noted it. Everything went into the same pile. The name I saw on her phone was genuinely accidental. She'd left it on the table when she went to find something in another room, and a line notification came in. I didn't read it. I saw the contact name, that's all. A male Thai name, which proves nothing by itself. There are men in everyone's lives. But she came back and saw the notification and picked the phone up and pocketed it in one smooth movement and said nothing about it. And the way she said nothing about it was very particular, not guilty, not defensive. Just quiet in that direction. The way Thai people are quiet when they're avoiding a thing they don't want to explain, krang jai they call it. The social grace of not creating discomfort. She was very good at it. None of this is conclusive. I want to be clear about that. I don't have a confession or a photograph or a private detective's report. What I have is a wall that doesn't look right. And I've been looking at walls long enough to know that when a wall doesn't look right, it usually isn't right, even if you can't see exactly where the fault is from where you're standing. Over about 2 months of this quiet, careful, uncomfortable observation, I assembled a picture I couldn't unsee that was very likely someone else. Possibly there had been from early on, a Thai man probably, someone with a life here, a future here. Someone who fit into her actual life in ways that I, a 59-year-old Cork bricklayer on a tourist visa, structurally could not. Whether our relationship had been constructed around me from the start as a financial arrangement, and I genuinely cannot say it was, there were moments between us that felt absolutely real, and I am not prepared to retrospectively hollow them out, or whether something genuine had over time been supplemented by a practical arrangement running alongside it, I don't know. I really don't know. What I know is what I assembled from 2 months of paying attention, and what I assembled was enough. I think about Cine Ed sometimes in this context. The way I spent years not saying things, not asking things, not making decisions when I needed to. I don't want to use her as an excuse for what I did in Thailand. That would be too convenient and too unfair to both of them. But there's something in the shape of it. A man who never learned to ask the direct question at the right time. Who mistaked patience for wisdom and calls waiting a virtue when sometimes it's just fear? I should have asked Willem more questions at that coffee. I should have asked Willem more questions at that coffee. I should have asked him what he meant by that nod. I should have asked Nook, at some early point, to tell me plainly what her life was when I wasn't in it. I didn't ask any of those things. That's on me. The weather was still warm. It's always warm. Outside my apartment on the Swai off Nimmen, the motorbikes went past every 30 seconds, and the spirit house on the pole had fresh flowers on it that someone changed every morning, and the mountains were there in the distance looking exactly as they always looked. None of it had changed. I was the thing that had changed. Quietly, over 2 months of paying attention to a wall that didn't look right. I knew what I was going to do. I just hadn't done it yet. I told her there was a family matter at home, which was almost true. I did go home. A man going home to the only family he has left, which is himself and a one-bedroom flat in Cork city center. That's a family matter of a kind. I'm not entirely comfortable with that framing, but it's the one I used, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I didn't make a scene. There was no confrontation, no accusations laid out on a table, no dramatic reckoning in a restaurant somewhere. That's not who I am, and it would have served no purpose anyway. What would I have said? I have a feeling nook, assembled from 2 months of noticing things that individually prove nothing. There was no version of that conversation that ended well for either of us. So I didn't have it. I packed the same bag I'd arrived with, paid the last month of rent, which I'd already paid up front, so there was nothing owed. Left the apartment key with the landlord on a Tuesday morning. Told Nook by line that evening that something had come up at home. Nothing I could explain at a distance. I had to go back. She replied quickly. She hoped everything was all right. She would miss me. Safe travels. Warm. Entirely warm. I sat with my phone for a while after that in the departure hall at Chiang Mai airport and thought about everything and nothing in particular. I stopped the transfers without announcement, no message explaining it, no formal ending. I just stopped. The same way water stops when you turn off a tap, not dramatic, just absent. She called twice over the following 2 weeks. I let it ring. Not from cowardice, or not only from cowardice, more because I had nothing to say that would have been useful to either of us. She sent 3-line messages across maybe 10 days, all of them warm, none of them frantic, which told me something. A woman who had genuinely lost what she thought she had would have been frantic. These messages were warm and patient and spaced apart in the way of someone who is waiting to see which way something falls before deciding how much energy to spend on it. The last one said she hoped I was well and that she was there if I wanted to talk. Then nothing. Clean, quiet nothing. I did the accounting on the flight home, something to do with 8 hours. Flights and accommodation across 3 trips, adding it all up properly for the first time, roughly €4,000. I'm a careful spender, and I use guest houses and modest apartments and ate at ordinary places, so this is accurate enough. The running transfers, the clinic bill, the sister's registration fee, the motorbike, the rent gap, €1,700. The foundation money, the duo-o-woro, the foundation money, the duo-o-wo, duo-o-wo, duo-o-wo. Meals and outings and Songkran envelopes and petrol and all the daily small costs of a man in a relationship in a foreign country. Call it €900, which is probably low if anything. Total, approximately €14,000. My 60,000 is mostly intact. I use that word precisely, mostly. 54 or so, if the accounting is right. Less if I've been imprecise about anything, which I may have been. The pension keeps coming in. I'm not ruined. I want to be clear about that because I know how these stories usually go, and this one went differently, at least in a financial sense. What I lost that doesn't show up in a spreadsheet is a harder list to make. There's the farmyard. That specific afternoon, the father standing up to shake my hand when it cost him to stand, the mother's food, the wood smoke, the feeling of being somewhere that had weight to it. I don't get to have that back, not that version of it. Even if everything about that afternoon was entirely genuine, and I believe it was, I've contaminated the memory by coming to know what I came to know afterward, and I can't uncontaminate it. That's a loss. There's a year of hope. More specifically, the particular shape of that hope. The idea that at 58, 59 years old, something could still happen that was worth calling a life rather than a careful management of the absence of one. I had that idea for a while. It was a good idea to have, even if it turned out to be mostly wrong. Losing it a second time is harder than losing it the first time. And there's Nook listening to me talk about Sinead. I told her about Sinead early, too early, and she listened with her whole face. I've said this before and I keep coming back to it, because it keeps coming back to me. Whether that quality of attention was genuine or performed or something that started as one and became the other, I cannot tell you. She was very good at listening. Some people just are. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, and it also isn't nothing. I went back to Cork. Mossy texted asking how it went. I said grand. Same as last time. He texted back a thumbs up, and that was the extent of that conversation. I go to building sites sometimes, not to work. My back wouldn't thank me, and nobody's hiring a 59-year-old bricklayer for anything strenuous. Just to watch. There's a development going up near the South Mall, mixed use. They've got a decent crew on it, and I've stood at the hoarding a few times in the morning watching them work. There's something in the rhythm of it I find steadying, course by course. You bed the mortar, you set the unit, you check the level, you move on. I'm sleeping fine, I'm eating. I go to the English market on Saturday mornings, the way I always did. Life is what it always was, more or less. which I suppose is either a comfort or a disappointment, depending on the day. I'm thinking about going back to Thailand. People find this surprising when I say it. I understand why. But I liked Chiang Mai. I liked the mooping in the mornings, and the temple bells, and the mountains, and the extraordinary value of eating a bowl of noodles that cost less than €1 and was better than anything I'd find in Cork for 10 times the price. I liked sitting on a balcony watching the sun go down behind mountains. I liked feeling warm. None of that was nooks, and none of that has been taken from me. I'm not going back to find someone. I want to be very direct about that. I'm not going back with a view to anything other than being somewhere warm that I like being. If I meet someone, I hope I'll be wiser than I was, and I'm not entirely sure I will be, because wisdom and loneliness are in constant negotiation, and I can't tell you in advance which one wins. But I'm going back. Probably in January. When Cork goes that particular color. Here's the thing I've been thinking about, and it's the thing I want to leave you with if you're watching this. The difference between Thai and Western dating isn't that they're dishonest and we're not. I believed that for a while. It's a comfortable story. It puts the wrongness over there and the rightness over here, and it's not true. The difference is that over there, love and money aren't embarrassed to be in the same sentence. They understand, in a way we've somehow trained ourselves out of understanding, that people have financial realities, and those realities don't evaporate because you have feelings for someone. A Thai woman who loves a man and also needs help with her family's medical bills is not being contradictory. She's being honest about what love actually costs in a world where things cost things. We pretend they're separate. Love is pure, and money is grubby, and never the two shall meet. We've built whole romantic traditions around this pretense. And then we're shocked when the pretense meets a culture that never bothered pretending, and we call it a scam, because scam is a cleaner story than you didn't understand the terms you'd agreed to. I'm not sure which of us has it right, look it. I'm genuinely not sure. That's Brendan's story, and it's one of the more honest ones we've heard on this channel. Not a disaster, not a triumph. Something with real texture to it, the kind that doesn't resolve cleanly because real things don't resolve cleanly. What Brendan experienced isn't unique to Thailand, and it isn't unique to foreign men. Relationships where genuine feeling and financial arrangement coexist are everywhere. What's different here is the cultural transparency, or rather, the cultural assumption that this transparency isn't necessary, that the arrangement is simply understood. When a Western man walks into that without understanding it, he's not being deceived so much as he's failing to read a language nobody thought to translate for him. So here's what we'd say to anyone heading to Thailand thinking they've found the one who's different, the one with the job and the paid-for coffee and the family who seems so real. She may well be different. The family may well be real. And you should still learn the language before the money moves, because different doesn't mean outside the rules, it just means the rules are different. Subscribe if this was useful. Subscribe if this was useful. Share it with someone who needs to hear it before they need to hear it. Look after yourselves out there. This is Thailand.